Sports Professor Rick Horrow, welcome to Beyond the Scoreboard, the inside look at the trillion-dollar sports business from a marketing, legal, business, deal-making perspective, given what just happened at Super Bowl 51, a sociological and anthropological perspective when people land from another planet and look at our time machine 4,000 years from now. They will see Tom Brady, the Roger Goodell handshake with Robert Kraft, and the indelibly etched seventh Super Bowl, fifth Brady win that everybody now uses as mantra all over New England, all over the country, and I dare say all over the planet, maybe the solar system. So now we morph into other things. NHL getting ready for basically the second half of its season and more winter classics. NBA All-Star Weekend in New Orleans. The NASCAR season opening with the Daytona 500, college pay-per-play litigation in the courtrooms. We'll have a whole lot of that stuff coming up. But this week on Beyond the Scoreboard, we do some reflection. Trenny Kusnarek talks about football as it relates to a number of dimensions, the White House visits, Pop Warner youth football, and the like. Peter O'Reilly, the head of NFL special events, not just Super Bowl, Combine, Draft, Pro Bowl, and the like. What was the risk of putting on a major event like this, and was it worth it? Certainly a lot to cover. Beyond the Scoreboard, up next. Beyond the Scoreboard, you ought to subscribe to our iTunes feed, Stitcher, Google Play, Audio Boom. Look for us around the NBC family. Super Bowl 51 comes and goes, and with it, economic impact of a significant amount for the city of Houston and the region. NFL, an incredibly popular game for the ages, first in overtime, on and on and on. But it's more than that. It's a showcase of how you put on a mega event. Peter O'Reilly, in his early 40s, is the senior vice president of events for the NFL, reporting directly to Roger Goodell. He joined the NFL in 2005 after serving a senior role on the New York City Olympic Organizing Committee for the 2012 bid. NBA's production and marketing departments. Started his career as a studio coordinator with ABC Sports, but he's so much more than that. He has a responsibility not only to make sure the Super Bowl comes off flawlessly, but so too the Combine, the Draft, the Pro Bowl, and a whole host of other events that make the NFL really, really special. Peter O'Reilly. In the boardroom, keeping score, Super Bowl 51. Big event, but this is more of a general how to put on mega events by the league that is known as the special event and economic juggernaut. And the guy that's been running it is a veteran of the sports industry for 20 years. He joined the NFL in 2005. He played a senior role in New York City 2012. The Olympic bid, NBA production marketing department's career at ABC Sports. He got an MBA at the wrong side of the river, the Harvard Business School. We won't hold it against him. Peter O'Reilly, how's that for an intro?
Oh, wow, I'll take it, Rick.
Yeah. So I was good to have you. By the way, under the circumstances, which is, full disclosure, we tape this before and we air it before and after, which is a testament to the stability of Peter O'Reilly's job, basically running all things special events. And tell me broadly, special events meaning draft, Pro Bowl, etc., and Super Bowl. What else is in your portfolio?
Yeah, draft, Pro Bowl, Combine, kickoff, working very closely on the international game, especially as we went to Mexico this year, and then all of our big owners meetings. But really, Super Bowl, draft, Combine, kickoff, Pro Bowl. So a good run of big moments throughout the year.
Well, it's a good run of the biggest moments throughout the century and throughout the universe. Your business is all about realistically delivering on expectations and appropriately managing all risks. That's overly simplifying, But comment on the kind of assessment of pulling off one of the biggest events in the planet.
Sure. For a Super Bowl like this one, where it's really a 3-year planning cycle, where you lay the foundation early, you really get the core elements. Where's the center of gravity? You know what you have in a stadium. You really get those elements set, and then as you come into that last year and those last 6 months, you really try to determine how do you each year try to take it to a next level. And that for us is certainly the game is huge, and that's major focus both from a security standpoint, a significant driver on the revenue side, and that's the showcase. But it's really about the week-long experience. How do you create access for that fan who may not have a chance to be in the stadium? How do you bring that together? How do you create a hub of activity that really creates a real soul around the Super Bowl? So all of those things come into it. And to your point, Rick, it's about managing the risk, making sure we're being smart operationally, not taking on too much risk, but also each year pushing the envelope and making sure we're doing things that are worthy of the Super Bowl stage and make people say, wow.
I'm not an apologist for Peter O'Reilly or the NFL or its position, but I've had the honor of seeing the event handbook and how big it is and how many contingency plans are in there. This is certainly not like going to a neighborhood 7-Eleven and buying a six-pack of beer for your buddies. The planning of this is stupendous. Can you give us, anecdotally maybe, but give the international viewers and listeners some idea of the scope?
Yeah, when you think about 20,000 plus accredited people, that's what the staff really balloons to, who are playing a role, large or small, in the Super Bowl. You've got, from a security perspective, you're dealing with certainly everyone at the federal level, from Homeland Security and FBI all the way down to HPD and the local authorities. So those efforts and those contingencies and those exercises where you sit around the table with every local, state, national, federal figure, as well as all the operational people, and go through those plans is it's significant. And the great part is we've got an incredible core team who has many Super Bowls under their belt and have seen a lot of different things and worked a lot of events around the world. But it's a unique one. Many other events are, multi-day, multi-week events. This is, all leads to one day and one big moment that is about the game on the field and the two best teams. But obviously there's a lot else that surrounds it. There's one of the biggest concerts of the year jammed into 13 minutes between the two halves that has a lot of complexity to it and a lot of fun to it. That's where I am right now at the stadium with rehearsals for Lady Gaga.
Are you singing or is she?
I'm going to leave that to her, Rick.
Yeah, good. That's good. Well, we got Jamie Roots in a prior interview to actually do some singing for us as well. And he
has
and
some,
you should
good
stick.
pipes, Jamie.
He has good pipes, but he and you have one thing in common. You should stick to your respective day jobs, and we all understand that. Jamie's and Rick Campo are interesting, good examples of the public-private business partnership it takes to put it on. Without being a little Pollyannish, you wouldn't have anything near the event you have without the host committee, Greater Houston Partnership, Texans, correct?
Absolutely. That is the core of the Super Bowl. They're the folks who bid on this game, had the vision for bringing the Super Bowl back to Houston, building on 2004 when this city was in a very different place. There's been incredible development, as you know, in Houston since 2004. The downtown is in a very different place, and that's thanks to people like Rick and Jamie and others who said, we're gonna take this on, we're gonna rally the community, and that's in so many different ways. That is that comes to life. So that's so core. And leaders like Mayor Sylvester Turner, who is a great leader and inspirational and is part of it. So we at the NFL are incredibly grateful for those partners on the ground, because the Super Bowl is about locking arms with those people, coming up with a vision, and then seeing it through till this weekend.
Well, seeing it through to the weekend is great, but for the after, getting people out of town, as Rick Campo said, but then not sunsetting and behaving with a legacy that's sustaining, how difficult is it to keep an ongoing interest on the projects that are started and committed by the host committee / NFL partnership after the game is gone?
Yeah, I mean that's a huge part of what we do, and we having that legacy component, and not just here's the NFL's efforts over here and here's a host committee's efforts over here. When it works well, we've got a shared vision. We've got pooling our charitable commitments and our foundation dollars to make sure that the fields that we build, the spaces that we create, the opportunities that we create live on and have legs and are connected into the community, that the Texans are connected into those things. So that's a huge part of it. And it's, there is, a lot of major events have this, but Super Bowl certainly has it. It's a date certain. And if you look at downtown Houston, that Marriott Marquis, our headquarters hotel, was finished 3-4 weeks before everyone moved in. But we're going to get it done. Restaurants downtown, other spaces. That was a date certain to make sure that things were ready to go. And there'll be a legacy of other events seeing the heartbeat of the city that now exists in downtown Houston. And it'll attract other business and other big events, which they're excited about.
And Peter O'Reilly, you don't have the issue that Olympic chairmen of local committees have in terms of guaranteeing that the facilities are used because they're the host facilities of the NFL team that applies, but the infrastructure commitments, the transportation commitments that some Olympics work well with and some do not are issues that are particularly important to you too, I would guess.
They are. Certainly there's, from a stadium perspective, often we're improving with the owner of the stadium or the owner of the team to make sure we take it to its zenith on Super Bowl Sunday. But those other elements and making sure that the transportation infrastructure is there, that the elements that we need for all of the fan events, that a convention center, which often plays a significant role in the Super Bowl fan experience, is at its best during that Super Bowl. And then that remains beyond. And one of the things we often hear, which we love hearing around a Super Bowl, is it brings so many different pieces, whether that's the public safety community or the business community together, and then that lives on for the next big event or the next component, or there's glue that the white hot spotlight of the Super Bowl brings, and it allows it to continue on. And I'm excited to see that year after year as I go back to these cities where we've had Super Bowls.
Well, and also to make the case, obviously, post and pre, 500 or so million of economic impact is the number that Rick has been using or so. But the 3.5 billion media impressions and the awareness and mentions and quality of life and the synergy between people, it's often very hard to quantify but easy to understand, right?
It is. It's easy to understand. Certainly that direct economic impact is there. But it's also about, is when we sat down with Houston for the first time, they want to involve the message and the way people think about Houston, the city of the future. There's so much innovation here. There's so much industry here besides oil and gas and the space industry that is coming through and is on display here as this incredibly diverse city, what is really described as the most diverse city in the United States, and a city that thrives on innovation. This weekend we're doing a major event at the Texas Medical Center. Their medical community here is first class, and really wanted to shine a spotlight on that. And those eyeballs, those impressions, those stories have real value to these communities, and that's great to be able to provide that platform.
Couple more. Peter O'Reilly, the guy that runs the entire Super Bowl, he's taking time out from singing with Lady Gaga to give us some time here. No, he's not. The economic impact argument we talked about before. Does the ongoing controversy that happens in any community about sales tax abatement and the fact that this could go to other projects if the sales tax money was not forgiven? Obviously, well, first of all, answer the argument. Then second, does it bother you that it keeps popping up city after city?
It doesn't bother me. I understand the scrutiny around that. I think it's fairly clear the positive economic impact that trumps any any sales tax abatement there. And from our standpoint, it doesn't bother us at all. We understand the argument. We can handle working through that. But that is, it's clear. And this is as you know well, Rick, this is a very competitive process with a lot of cities bidding each year. It gets more and more competitive every year. And I think you'll see that continuing. And in sitting with Mayor Turner yesterday, he very clearly wants Houston as part of the rotation and the list of cities who want to host a Super Bowl. And as we continue to move our events around, the number of cities that want to host an NFL draft, that want to host a Pro Bowl grows every year. So the impact is clear on the economic side. And no, we don't fret answering the questions because we're very confident in the impact we're leaving.
Clearly. Future Super Bowl / special event rotation. Next quick question. Obviously, the bidders are more aggressive than ever before. They see the benefits with new stadiums and construction renovation. So the list of quote-unquote preferred or actual rotation candidates is larger, but also you have the ability to provide Pro Bowl, draft, some other special events that you can rotate around the country as well. Do we have a matrix that talks about what you're going to do over the next 10 years? Is it separate processes? Do you link them together?
It's interesting. We have an ownership committee, the Super Bowl and Major Events Advisory Committee, that spends a lot of time thinking about that. We have a good run of Super Bowls already awarded, obviously headed to Minnesota and the new stadium there, Atlanta following that, and the new Mercedes-Benz Stadium down in Atlanta that'll open this year, and then to Miami, and there's great renovation down there, and then to the new stadium in Inglewood and Los Angeles. So that's the run. So I think we'll go into the spring and name the finalists for that next set of Super Bowls, and there's strong interest both among the traditional set of Super Bowl hosts, and then, as you said, other more non-traditional hosts are interested as well, whether it's related to new stadiums or not. We look at draft as a bit of a separate process. That's still in its early days. The Super Bowl is so mature in terms of its bidding process. In moving out of New York after 51 years to Chicago for 2 years and then to Philadelphia this April, we're still learning. We're still evolving. But I think we and the commissioners see the opportunity to get the draft around, which is this rite of spring when everyone's got hope. So I think you'll see us looking at moving it around to more cities. You have fewer barriers with the draft because weather is less of an issue, stadium is less of an issue. So there's more opportunity to get it around and reach more fans.
Got it. As one last Super Bowl related question, is it in your interest long term to continue to award multiple Super Bowls at a given time to provide some certainty to people over a longer period of time, or is it better to kind of hold off and see how the climate evolves on a regular basis?
It's an interesting question. I think there's more benefit to getting further out. It allows, as Super Bowl gets more complex, as it gets more expensive for both the NFL and for our host committees who are raising a lot of private dollars to ensure Super Bowl success. More lead time is helpful. So I think you'll see that. The counter to that is making sure you have flexibility and you can see out on the horizon whether those are new stadiums coming on or other changes. So overall, you'll see us continuing to push further out, but we've got to have an eye towards where there are shifts in the landscape, where might there be new stadium opportunities which would tie into a Super Bowl game.
Final Super Bowl, do you view it as a week-long TV show, which it's becoming more and more of? Do you view it as a week-long B2B event or a week-long opportunity for bucket list fan experience?
All the above, but for me, it's a week, and it may be a cop out, but I see it as a week-long fan experience, and whether that's you want that fan who's sitting in Topeka who may not make it to Houston to feel like they can get inside the Super Bowl and be able to, and certainly not just via television, via social, via, we're pumping out so much content across every social platform, but that's giving them that inside look, and whether that they want to see the celebrities or see the players and break down the X's and O's. And then certainly on the ground, this is a week-long festival, and it is one of the great festivals and celebrations that ultimately culminates with what will hope be a great game on Sunday. So it's to us, it's about whether live and in person or via whatever platform you're on. This is the ultimate in sports, and we want to get people and fans closer to it.
So your predecessors, Jim Steig and Frank Sapovitz, have said, they may not have, but I'm going to make this up by saying that they age in dog years after the Super Bowl. How long will you plan to do what you're doing today? 30, 40, 50 more years?
We'll see. I'm loving it for now, and it is it's a thrill every day, and I feel incredibly fortunate to be involved in doing what I'm doing. So I do not take any of it for granted, and I didn't work as closely with Jim, but Frank I'm still very close with, and learned a lot from him. So there's a great legacy around this game, and I have tons of respect for it.
Final question. So the Tuesday morning after the Super Bowl, because the Monday you make sure people get out of town right, you shut your phone off and you put it away and you decompress for how long before you start working on the draft?
Combine first. Come on, we got to go to Indy.
Oh yeah, forgot that. Combine.
We're going to turn that into a fan event this year.
Mitch.
I know,
I did.
I forgot that one.
Yeah, you did.
That one's becoming a bigger fan event this year. We're bringing it to the fans. So yeah, I think I head to Indy for some planning meetings and then down to Philadelphia on the Monday after. So I think I'm home with the kids for a few days, and they just hit the ground here in Houston. They won't see much of me over the next few days, but it's good to have them here.
Ladies and gentlemen, the best, Peter O'Reilly. My one bit of advice: turn the damn phone off. Turn it off.
I will try,
Peter.
Rick.
Speak with you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate it.
Time for a look at some of the big issues around sports this week: business, marketing, endorsements. And it's not just the Super Bowl, but there are some NFL issues, for example. They've scouted 4 Canadian stadiums in 2016 as candidate sites for NFL future regular season games: Rogers Centre, Olympic Stadium, Montreal; Commonwealth Stadium, Edmonton; BC Place Stadium in Vancouver. And obviously all 4 venues considered, confirmed by NFL Executive VP Mark Waller, primarily inviting and evaluating locker rooms, NFL technological standards. And Waller noted the NFL has not yet reached a conclusion on a Canadian venue, nor does it disclose findings of information missions, but it'll be heading back to Mexico this year, regardless of what happens north of the border: the Raiders and the Patriots, Estadio Azteca in Mexico City next season. My take is that it's inevitable and positive news by the NFL to expand its reach north of the border while continuing to work with the CFL. Other issues beyond football: 12 cities formally applied for MLS expansion bids. Only 4 of these hopeful markets eventually landing a team: Nashville, Indy, Cincy, Detroit, Charlotte, Sacramento, Phoenix, Raleigh, St. Louis, San Antonio, San Diego, and Tampa. Wow. All vying to join the growing domestic soccer league. The groups include owners with interests in the NFL, NBA, and MLB. 8 have interest in teams in the NASL and USL. Expansion Committee for the MLS expected to begin reviewing applications later this month, beginning play in 2020, 2 of them, and the other 2 to follow. Speaking of the 12 applicant cities, Commissioner Don Garber said, all great cities, supportive proven leaders, and passionate fans. And here's my take. The MLS now faces the standard trade-off that all leagues analyze: significant expansion revenues and higher franchise values versus the long-term harm of overexpansion. As some people like to say, not so fast, my friend. How about the NHL? Pittsburgh Penguins center Sidney Crosby finishes atop the list of best-selling NHL jerseys during the first half of 16-17. Crosby's sensational 16 campaign one that included a Stanley Cup title last season, and a spot of the top 3 at total points this season, resulted in him having the highest selling jersey for all of 16. Meanwhile, jersey sales for the Leafs center Austin Matthews through the first 3 months of 16-17 reflect the status as a rookie sensation. His sweater, the second highest selling jersey on shopnhl.com, and everybody who ever lived in Canada seems to have a Matthews Leaf jersey. Chicago Blackhawks center Patrick Kane finished third on this year's list. He led the NHL in jersey sales back in 2014, but slipped after sexual assault allegations last season. And rounding at the top 5, Blackhawks center Jonathan Toews, who led in 2015, and Edmonton Oilers center Connor McDavid. And here's my take. NHL astronomical health in many ways. Their superstars represent the younger demographic, Austin Matthews and Connor McDavid, also in Canada, combined with the old guard of Crosby, Kane, and others. A really, really good mix for the future. Finally, college sports. For thousands of current and former student athletes, a $6,000 check may soon be on the way, thanks to the settlement of a far-reaching class action case last week. The NCAA and 11 Division I conferences agreed to create a nearly $209 million fund for the benefit of current and former D1 basketball and FBS student athletes, settling the monetary claims portion of a grant in a class action lawsuit, according to the association. The settlement, announced in a Friday statement, funded entirely from NCAA reserves, and no conference or member schools required to contribute. Settlement is subject to approval by the court and will award class members money up to but not exceeding their full cost of attendance. Other aspects of the class action remain unresolved, including an effort to eliminate all restrictions on compensation for student athlete. And here's my take. While the NCAA stated it will vigorously oppose all portions of the lawsuit seeking pay-for-play, the next stage of the process focuses on changing existing rules so collegiate athletes receive more compensation. Stay tuned. Now to the business of the NFL. Yeah, we played a game last weekend. Trenny Kusneric, who's a frequent contributor on this podcast, weighs in on all aspects of football, pro, college, high school, and youth. Our regular segment, Trenny Kusneric, host of many shows on CSN New England, radio personality throughout New England as well. All Patriots all the time, but let's talk, Trenny. First of all, how are you? You covered the Super Bowl, obviously. Are you tired of the Super Bowl and the parade aftermath?
I'm not tired of it because it means that we have something to talk about, but I am physically, literally tired. I went to bed at 7 o'clock on Monday night and about 9:45 last night. And right now, as much as I enjoy these segments, I would like to be curled up in my bed sleeping right now because I cannot shake being exhausted.
Well, we'll keep it short, but listen, I would
it's much all right, I'm at work anyway. I can't go home and take a nap.
I know, you got other stuff to do. But, it is really interesting to watch the dynasty that is the Kraft dynasty and see how both Jonathan and Robert on a personal level feel about almost family and the whole drama over trophy presentation which I think was overblown. But I feel, and I'm much older than you are, as we all know, but I feel personally it's as if you watch Tiger winning one of his majors, or, I wasn't there, but I could understand watching Babe Ruth point in Wrigley Field and hit a home run. Same kind of feeling being around something that looks like the best ever. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, whether, I grew up a Packers fan, but I also am just a football fan in general. And to see what Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the Kraft family has accomplished is unprecedented. I mean, I joked, I've covered more parades and more championships in New England, and that includes the Red Sox, in 4+ years of living in the Boston area than I did in my entire other part of my career, save for the times when I worked national championships for networks. I worked a couple college national championships, Super Bowls, World Series, but that was not for a team that I was covering. I mean, to live in a region that, you're talking to kids yesterday, sort of one of the cool things Tuesday, one of the cool things at the at the parade where, the Invoke thing was a sign saying, I'm 12 years old and I've seen X amount of championships. I'm 15 and I've seen 10 champions. I mean, it's just insane how winning is just such a fabric of this region at this point, and that it's almost taken for granted.
Almost taken for granted. Similar feeling, by the way, in 72, 73, when it was my bucket list to watch the end of a perfect season for the Miami Dolphins, because then you expect, well, how many years in a row is it going to be? And if you look back at the 7 appearances, which I think is more impressive than the 5 victories, although you take the 5 victories and Brady's, and then you look back and you say, all right, we're used to it, so what happens next year? I think people 10, 15 years from now reflect back and realize how important this run was for the fabric of Boston. We'll talk about the fabric of our country in a minute, but the fabric of New England. So is that kind of the way you felt when you were down in the field taking a look at history?
Yeah, I mean, you just sort of feel like that the Patriots are as much of part of Boston as Boston is of the Patriots, and that they're sort of intertwined. And again, I came in, I wasn't here for the early championships. I didn't live here. I didn't grow up here, but it doesn't take away from my understanding of how much this team has meant to this region and how much this team obviously didn't put this region on the map, because Boston, I mean, Boston's where it all began, right? I mean, this is the region that the Pilgrims landed. This is the region that started the Revolutionary War. But there is something in sports legend that for a long time, when the NFL was king, this team was easily, from what I understand, 4th in the country or 4th in the region. Now it's easily the number one. It used to always be the Celtics and the Red Sox and then probably the Bruins and the Patriots. Now it's the Patriots are, 1A, 1B, 1C, 1D, and then you've got the Red Sox, the Celtics, and the Bruins.
Well, so Boston strong with the Red Sox, Boston stronger with the Patriots. But now we have an interesting issue, because after the drama of Deflategate, most everybody agrees that's over, and now we focus on certain post-Super Bowl NFL-related issues, CBA being reopened, so says DeMaurice Smith, so we've got all of those issues coming up as well, which also impacts discipline. That's another issue for another day. But a couple of NFL and football-related issues are on our plate. One is that we understand that the president is a magnet for criticism and a rallying point for things. But as far as visiting the White House, we understand that the Mexican and American soccer teams planning to play a tournament to protest the wall. We also have issues of people going to the White House and not going to the White House. What about your perspective on the sports and politics in this context?
I mean, I think that this is the first time in a long time, maybe, and with all due respect, Rick, I think you can speak to this better than I can, but I think this is really the first intersection of sports and politics that maybe we've seen since the early and mid 1960s. Famously, of course, something that's always brought up is Michael Jordan, that, he never wanted to comment on anything political because he said Republicans buy my sneakers as well. But we're seeing a lot of athletes and even teams, coaches get away from that in this current political climate. So, just a couple of examples. You had the Chicago Cubs visit the White House. It was the final big visit of the Obama administration. For those of you who don't pay that close attention to baseball, that's an abnormality. Usually teams visit the White House in the spring when they have a trip planned to either play the Nationals or the Orioles, or at least in that area. They're close. Maybe Atlanta would be the kind of the next closest, but they try to coincide it to make travel simple. Well, the Cubs chose not to do that. The Cubs chose to squeeze that, and it's no secret that Theo Epstein is a big donator to Democratic politics. He is very liberal and has been very critical of Donald Trump's remarks regarding the city of Chicago and the violence in Chicago. So you have that. Now you have the Super Bowl. and the Patriots winning, and you had Martellus Bennett say before they even won the Super Bowl, if we do win and I have the chance, I will not go to the White House. Devin McCourty coming out and saying a couple of days ago, I will not go to the White House. I do not feel welcome there. Dante Hightower saying this week, I will not go to the White House, saying it's not political, but still he's not going to go. And James White saying, I got to think about this for a second. Devin McCourty has a lot of pull in that Patriots locker room. And it'll be interesting to see if other African-American players and even some of the white players who lean further left, first guy that comes to mind is Chris Long, if they say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this. And then, as you said, you've got this Mexican-American, these soccer teams, 3 professional teams in Mexico extended an invitation to 3 teams, 2 in Texas, and I believe 1 in California. Am I right on that? No, Dallas, excuse me. All 3 in Texas, Houston Dynamo, FC Dallas, and the Rio Grande Valley FC Toros. So where this wall is supposed to be erected and saying, you know what, let's protest the wall, but let's protest it with a game. I cannot think, even if I look back to the 60s, of a time where there has been so much protest through sports against an elected figure, let alone an elected figure, of the magnitude of the President of the United States.
Let's, that ain't the half of it, as they say. So the Iranian government was thinking about terminating the visas for the World Wrestling Championship for U.S., so that's uncertain. The 2024 Olympic bid that L.A. masterfully put together after Boston dropped out, and we'll see what happens this summer on that one. A lot to be determined by that, especially in social media. He could tweet tomorrow. And then you have a whole World Cup 2026 where, guess what, U.S., Canada, and Mexico were supposed to do a joint bid. So we'll see about that. I find the irony interesting that we've spent the first third of this discussion talking about how sports is a social healer, and now we have a divisive area where sports can really be more public and show everybody how divided the country really is by certain actions, relative to a political figure. So the irony isn't lost on all of us,
No, I mean, and that, I guess, that's interesting. I didn't even think of it in that context, but it really is. And I think that, we're kind of back in that era where some people now are saying I'm thinking again specifically of Martellus Bennett, who has been very vocal the last couple of days, tweeting out things about how he feels African Americans or just people in lower socioeconomic situations have been perceived, the opportunities that are laid forth in front of them, that their only way out is music or athletics. And he's saying, no, that's not the case. This is why I have this imagination laboratory. This is why I write these books. We're in an interesting time. It used to be that I think sports, and a lot of people still wish it was this way, that sports is an escape, right? That you don't have to think about politics when you turn the game on. But that's bleeding over now. For the first time, I would argue since, in my recollection, this much since the 1960s. So it's an interesting time, and I'm really curious to see in this first year. We have our first champion of 2017. I am curious to see what happens in particularly the NBA. To see whoever wins in the NBA title, if they as a team decide to forego a trip to, because that would be the largest protest. I'm trying to remember a time when an entire team said, nope, we're not going. We are not going to the White House. And I think that could happen. I really do.
Here's what I'm hoping as a segue into our next and final issue is that by that time, we're in June or July. That's the time when this World Cup bid's supposed to be put together. That's the time when the Olympic bid's supposed to be put together. I hope there is a major sea change in reaction, in attitude, in presentation. Maybe the sun rises in the west and we all go home angry or disappointed. But I'm hoping when that happens that the NBA team will feel like they ought to go because maybe the White House gets the message. What do you think?
I mean,
silence.
I'm not as optimistic as you. And I'm on the opposite side. I hope that if the climate is the same as it is now, I hope an entire team has the guts to stand up and say, no, we're not going to put up with this. We are not going to put up with the way that, with the injustices that are accepted, the way that you speak about our communities, the way you speak about our civil rights leaders, and that somebody says, "Nope, I'm out. I'm out."
Well,
But I mean, I'd
get
like to hope that like the tweets stop, but there's nothing to indicate that the climate is going to change. Everything we thought might change and the attitudes that might change once Mr. Trump took office has not changed. If anything, it has been amplified. And I just don't see that changing anytime soon.
That's a very fair comment. I will say that if it doesn't change, you're not alone in this assessment. I think a lot of people will feel exactly as you do, and here's hoping, but we'll see. And by the way, the other piece of the segue is that football is always a platform, and this year's kids will be 20 years from now decision makers. So then the question is, will those kids have been growing up playing football? According to the New York Times, sharp decline in youth football participation over the past few years. The concussion crisis. Full disclosure, I've been on the board of Pop Warner for a number of years, and this is a big, big issue for a number of reasons. Flag football, USA football, attempting to play a game between 6 and 9 players on the field instead of 11, and the field's smaller, kickoffs and punts eliminated. Packers president Mark Murphy, the head or on the USA Football Board of Directors, say they may be more comfortable with this as an alternative. And all these organizations, like USA Football and Pop Warner, are struggling to find the answers. What do you think are the answers?
I mean, I think maybe the first step towards an answer, or maybe at least keeping kids involved at a young age and keeping them interested in football, is not allowing kids to tackle until they're at least 12, 13, 14 years old. I was talking with a former player at the Super Bowl, and I said, "Will you let your boys play football?" And he said they will not be allowed to tackle until they're in high school. Absolutely not. I'm not putting their brains in that position. I was talking to another former player. His kids chose soccer and basketball. He said, "I let them choose whatever they want, but I'd be lying if I said I wasn't relieved." And there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about how many hits I took and what my brain might be like. So that is a real concern. And I know that, they're trying to go this route. I was just reading an article in the New Yorker from a few weeks back that some of these high schools are trying to use the MVPs. Those are the automated, like, robotic tackling dummies, to try and simulate so that they're not taking as many hits in practice. But the problem is then you're not learning how to tackle properly because you see this non-human thing and you just launch yourself at it. There's just a lot of questions, and I think that the NFL has to figure out, and Pop Warner and high school football needs to figure out a way that football does not go the way of boxing, which is that only kids in a lower socioeconomic situation are playing the sport because they see no other way out. And that is something that this article in the New Yorker brought up that I don't think the one in the New York Times did, which is what ends up happening is, the moms and dads on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, they can afford, they'll just put their kid in another sport. But if you're living in Appalachia and your family doesn't have any money and the only way you think you can get out because your school is terrible and your education is terrible is to be a star football player, and you have a good team at your high school, those are the parents who are still going to put those kids in. So what does that do to the sport overall? And I don't have an answer for that. I really don't. And that to me is one of the biggest concerns and one of the undercovered concerns that the NFL has.
Well, you don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. I don't think anybody does. But I think the real key is to stay one step ahead of the science and not try to make excuses about why you haven't followed the science, and therefore what makes the change? Well, is it the collective bargaining reopener where DeMaurice Smith says that's going to be big on the table for the next one? Is it something that we've been grappling with in Pop Warner for a couple of years, which is they may be out of business soon if insurance carriers don't lower their premiums and decide what the risk is really like? Is it big-time players saying we're not going to play anymore, or we're certainly going to retire early and we're not letting our kids play? Is it Will Smith in another concussion movie? Is it all of those? What do you think is the biggest factor for change in all of this?
Again, I think it starts at the root level. I think that it starts with Pop Warner. I think it starts with families, and it starts with the demographic of who plays football. If moms and dads look at the NFL and they feel like they're being hoodwinked and they feel like the NFL is downplaying the concerns and they don't trust the NFL, then, moms and dads that have an option are going to say, you know what, Johnny, you don't get to play football. I'm really sorry. I know you like it. But mom and dad just don't feel. Try soccer instead, where they're outlawing heading for kids. Try basketball instead. Try golf. Try swimming. Try something else. When I did a USA swimming event earlier this year for NBC, they've seen an uptick in kids joining swimming, and they think part of it is that some of these parents are looking at it and saying, well, you can't make the money you can make, but you can still get a college scholarship and go to school and get a good education and get a free ride to college. So why don't you try swimming? It's something you can do your entire life. It's not going to hurt your brain. It's not going to hurt your body. And that to me that's the big issue. And I don't know how you counterbalance that, because if you do tell the truth about what's really going on, well, the truth is that what is it? 80 out of 84, retired players who have passed away have that tau protein on their brain. They have some form of CTE. I don't know if it shows. If more research goes into it, we find out that the average public also has a lot of tau proteins on their brain. And so it's like, hey, listen, this is just a natural progression of the way that things that happen biologically. And that research comes out. But right now, they're in between a rock and a hard place.
Well, and Trendy Kuznarek, as usual, very reasoned positions on big issues that neither of us can solve, but maybe we can get people focused a little better and a little closer on all of those. Here's the weather report. As I understand, through the beginning of the archiving of this Keeping Score podcast, snow, more snow, blizzard.
Yes.
I'm here where I'm overlooking lake and a beautiful sunset, and you're about to come down to Fort Myers and enjoy spring training.
I am.
As well.
I'm going to get a little bit of snow on Thursday, and then I am getting out to the sun and the palm trees of Florida. I'm basically missing all of February in New England, which is okay with me.
Awesome. Well, next time we do this, we'll hook us up through the modern marvels of technology, but we will be under different palm trees talking sports. How's that?
All right. Sounds good. We'll talk to you soon.
And now for my final take. Is there anybody alive in America that doesn't know that Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, and the New England Patriots are Super Bowl champs yet again? Maybe somebody did. 466 passing yards, 5th Super Bowl win, MVP, 4th time he won the award. The bottom line is you're in there with greatness, kind of like being there watching Babe Ruth point to a Wrigley Field bleachers. I wasn't there, but I heard. How about Cal Ripken's Iron Man streak, the Dolphins' perfect season, and on and on. Yeah, it's kind of hard to describe, and growing up around sports, it's one of those feelings where you were just lucky to be in the stadium. But despite being the busiest man in sports while all this is going down, NFL's Senior Vice President of Events, Peter O'Reilly, sat with me for a revealing conversation, and he said it's a 3-year planning cycle. As the Super Bowl gets more complex, it's more expensive for the NFL and the host committees. Is it worth it? Well, Peter O'Reilly told us that it was, and we certainly believe it was. Super Bowl 51 at NRG Stadium brought in more than $500 million, but more than that, Rick Campo, the head of the host committee, tells us that it was about 3.5 billion impressions mentioning of Houston over the week and a half. Money can't buy that. No, money certainly can't, nor can it buy the community pride, not just Boston Strong and Boston Stronger, but Houston Strong now. Direct economic impact, important, but the indirect economic impact, even more. Another winner in NFL International was Super Bowl 51, resulting in significant international growth. StubHub reported that international ticket demand higher than ever, 10% of total sales coming from purchasers outside the U.S. and as far away as Australia, Hong Kong, Brazil, Israel, and South Africa. 7% of the total event requests from Canada and Mexico alone. Super Bowl 41, 51, 61, 71, and beyond will become more and more international as we go to the next step. By the way, StubHub ought to know. They have a marketplace that reaches 47 countries around the world. Speaks not only the global ticket popularity, but the access that StubHub has now provided for it. Lastly, in the aftermath of the big game, the NFLPA weighed in. They also said that we're going to opt out after 5 years and maybe before that, but you got to reopen. Players Union making a push for improved equipment, more consistent compliance. Cincinnati Bengal Eric Winston, union president, said he believes there is a need to up research on what sort of equipment we can look at. NFLPA has to work with the teams on concussion protocol. Roger Goodell and the owners have expressed interest in extending the 10-year agreement, but it appears there's going to be some issues to sort out before the deal can get done. Luckily, both the NFLPA and owners have plenty of time for discussion as the two parties need to devise a long-term agreement. But at a target goal by Roger Goodell each year of $25 billion, nobody's in a rush to kill the goose that lays the $25 billion economic golden egg. So, moving forward after Deflategate, everybody understands that's over. Got a lot of issues. Where do the Raiders go? What about concussions? What about issues relating to player safety? What about all of the other issues relating to economics? The one good thing is there is a sense of common purpose, and the understanding is, at this time of political turmoil, something like the best game ever played that Super Bowl 51 could give us may give us the ability to transcend, to bridge the gap, and to have some factors available to make our country whole again. Boy, do we need that. Well, that's our show for today. We'd like to thank Peter O'Reilly, NFL's Senior VP of Events. We'd like to thank Trendy Kuznarek, as always, and we'd like to thank you for listening. Join us next week once again when we go Beyond the Scoreboard.
Wingstop lives flavor, and you crave it. That's why we've created the Boneless Flavor Fix for you and your crew. 20 boneless wings, 4 flavors, 2 fries, 2 dips, and 2 cold drinks for just $20. Whether it's lemon pepper, Louisiana rub, or atomic, finding your flavor combo is easy, but deciding who you're going to split it with, that's a different story. The Boneless Flavor Fix. Just $20 for a limited time at Wingstop. The wing experts. Prices and participation may vary. See local restaurant for details.